Hi class. Today we're going to look at the conclusion of the Ottawa Valley Foods Products case. So I just want to preface this by saying that I'm not trying to defend one or the other person's point of view or what I think should or should not happen, but I want you to get into the practice of figuring out what are the perspectives and to try to evaluate a situation with less of your preconceived notions of what you believe the reality should be. As a manager and a leader of people and in industry, you're going to be forced to understand how people think, try to figure out what motivates them, try to figure out how they want to operate or what they should do. Just because you can't expect everyone to have the same frame of mind, the same perspective, the same upbringing as you. And so to understand what might be driving behavior is a good step in terms of trying to change that behavior potentially, or trying to take advantage of someone's abilities or reduce their anxieties or whatnot. And so I know reading this, you probably have come with some very strong opinions. This usually happens that way with this case. And I don't challenge that you might be right or wrong. I just challenge, let's try to figure out what's going on here. Okay, so let's kind of review what's going on in case some people are a little bit behind. The key players in this scenario are R.J. Jennings. He is the boss. It is Mary Gregory. She is the new, recently hired admin assistant of R.J. Jennings. Ella Arnold is R.J. Jennings' previous assistant, and she had been with him for many, many years and kind of knew how he worked and knew how things operated. Karen Russell and the other administrative assistants who are Mary Gregory's, peers. And so we want to figure out what is the issue, right? So all these people are involved, and so what is the issue at hand that's causing such a big problem, right? So we want to see why is Jennings at an impasse here. So Jennings has dismissed Mary Gregory, has told her that she's not going to keep on working for him. And so Mary Gregory talked to the admin assistants, and so all the rest of the admin assistants in support of Mary Gregory have stopped working for their bosses and assembled in the staff lounge. And so they have demanded that Jennings reverse the dismissal of Mary Gregory, make him hire her back, or else they will go to CBC at 6 p.m. That's in 20 minutes, and kind of air their concerns on national television. So let's pause here for a second. So it might be very simple to just say, well, who cares? I believe I'm right. I'm Jennings. I'm going to dismiss Mary Gregory, and why should I care if they go to the television? Because I believe I'm right, and that's not going to change my mind. It's important to understand a few points of view here. One, whatever happens, this is not good publicity, right? The admin assistants and Mary Gregory are going to make a case, and they're going to make perhaps you look bad, depending on how you view Jennings' actions. Two, all these admin assistants have walked out on their bosses, and so their bosses no longer have admin assistants, your peers, and so they are clearly not going to be happy with the situation, regardless if they trust you, or regardless if they think that you are right or wrong. They're now part of this scenario, and they're negatively impacted. And so the business is going to be negatively impacted, regardless of what you choose to do, if these people go to CBC and view their concerns on national television. Okay, so that's what is at hand. That is what is potentially going to happen if you don't do and concede to their demands. And so what is Jennings thinking about? Why is Jennings kind of hesitant, or why did Jennings do things? So let's look at what is Jennings' perspective here. And so one, R.J. Jennings hires this recent graduate who is qualifications, so clearly her resume is probably pretty good, and so she went to school for this job. First incident was Mary has refused to bring him coffee and the paper. Again, whatever you may believe is her job. It looks like he has asked her something, and she does not want to do it for whatever reason. Some of you may believe that that is her job to do it. Some of you may believe that it is not her job to do it. I'm pretty sure her job description did not say bring coffee in the paper. She just went to school for, I think, probably 4 years for this job, and so I'm pretty sure that that was not part of what she was signing up to do. Regardless if you believe that she should do it or not, that's looking at what R.J. Jennings has seen happen. Okay. Next, Jennings believes that Mary has humiliated him in front of his client in his office, which she probably did in that moment, and so that's what Jennings is angry about. 3, Mary refuses to file the reports, and this is probably definitely part of her job descriptions, but now she is taking a stance and refuses to do something. Unsure if this is because of what's happened in the past, probably is, but so she's kind of come to a point where she wants to refuse these orders. And now Mary is terminated. And so they send this grievance note to Jennings. And so what's influencing what Jennings thinks or what he believes should or should not be? So Jennings has been in the company for a long time. He's worked his way up. He's been there forever. I'm sure he has past experience. He believes he knows how things should be, right, from the past. He has had an assistant in Ella Arnold for many, many years who probably knew Jennings' habits, had paper and coffee ready for him, knew exactly what Jennings' working mode always was, and so would never probably step beyond what she thought was right or what she knew Jennings believed, right? So she had enough time with Jennings to know exactly what he thought and what he believed and what he expected of her. And so Jennings is used to this kind of treatment, or used to a certain kind of treatment that Mary Gregory clearly is not fulfilling, right? So that's what's driving what Jennings thinks. And so we have to understand that's why Jennings does this and believes this. And so we're not saying Jennings is wrong or that he's right, but this is what he's thinking. And so it's very important to understand what people are thinking, okay? So let's go to the other side. What is Mary Gregory thinking? What's her perspective? What does she believe? And so what does she see? So the first time Jennings has demanded coffee and the paper from her, again, like I mentioned before, it's likely that maybe she doesn't think this is part of her job. Maybe she thinks that this is beneath her. I don't know. But this was maybe getting off on the wrong foot kind of thing. So Jennings did brush it off a little bit, but Mary Gregory, maybe this held on to her. I don't know. But Jennings has demanded this of her. 2, Jennings embarrasses and belittles Mary in front of the client. And so in the previous slide, it said that Jennings felt that Mary Gregory humiliated Jennings. Okay, whereas what I can see here is Mary Gregory believes that Jennings has embarrassed and belittled her in front of the client. So let's examine what's happened here. And so many of you may believe that Gregory was in the wrong because of how she reacted in the end. And again, I would agree that she should not react like that in front of a client, because that's Jennings is her boss, and it's not good and not professional. However, Jennings' reaction to her when she was there, when she was socializing with the client, she may have thought was not good. And so I'm just going to speculate to kind of paint a different picture for Mary Gregory for all of you who may have thought that she was fully in the wrong. Imagine that it's said in the case that Jennings was running late, and so the client was there, and so maybe Mary Gregory let the client into the office and wanted to help Jennings out by stalling or by engaging in conversation because the client looked bored or whatever, right? So maybe she was doing what she thought was right in the moment to help Jennings with the client. The client was having a pleasant conversation with Mary Gregory, and so it's not like Jennings came in and the client seemed angry, right? And so in this way, Mary Gregory may have been helping Jennings out when Jennings was actually late. And then Jennings reacts to Mary Gregory, and then Mary Gregory obviously reacts back, and that was definitely not good. But her perspective may be that she was not respected, she was embarrassed, she was belittled, she probably feels not good that this has happened to someone who she's struck up a conversation with. And we don't even know. It's possible that the client has asked Mary Gregory a question. What if the client engaged with Mary Gregory to have this conversation, right? And so it's very important to understand that on the surface you may think something has happened, but in reality something very different may have taken place, and Jennings clearly does not understand or know what happened because he was not there. Okay. The third is Jennings needs Mary to file his reports, which again I would say that it is reasonable, but Mary refuses, and so here we are. Jennings fires Mary. Grievance note is given to Jennings, and so what is influencing what Mary thinks? Okay, we looked at what influenced Jennings' history, the past, Ella Arnold experience, all these kinds of things. But Mary, she's fresh out of school. She's quite young. She went to school for this kind of job, and so she clearly believes in this work. She's looking for meaningful work. She's looking for real experience. And so does she believe that these things are being given to her, or that she is achieving what she wants to achieve? Of course, it's very early, but she probably doesn't want to be getting coffee in the paper all the time. She probably wants to establish relationships. She probably wants to understand the business, and talking to a client may be helping her, yet at that point she is belittled and embarrassed, right? So Mary's perspective is one side, right? Jennings' perspective is another side. So let's just kind of summarize what we see here. So R.J. Jennings, Mary refuses to bring the coffee and paper, whereas Mary Gregory sees Jennings demanding coffee and paper. Okay, very different things. Probably not part of her job, even if you believe that this is what an assistant should do. I'm pretty sure it's not part of their actual job description. So can he demand that of her? Probably not. Should she bring him coffee if he wants it? Maybe. I can't really judge that. Would I side with Jennings? I would, but that's not really the point. The point is, he has an employee that he should be trying to establish relationships with, right? So that's a problem. 2, R.J. Jennings believes that Mary humiliated him in front of a client. Mary Gregory believes Jennings embarrassed her. Next is Mary refuses to file reports, while Mary Gregory thinks that Jennings has ordered her to do something, right? So there are different perspectives on what has happened here, right? So we need to understand that whether you agree or disagree with either side, the perspective is valid, because that's what they think, that's what they believe, that's what's in their head. And it's not about agree or disagree, it's about understanding why and how do we overcome this potential problem, right? This is clearly there are problems amiss here that need to be solved. Otherwise, Jennings is right. He can't work with this woman, and Mary Gregory shouldn't even want to work for him, because this is going to keep on happening, and that is a significant problem. So let's look at some solutions here. So what's happening, right? So definitely things have not happened that should have happened, right? There should have been an initial conversation. What are my expectations of you, Mary Gregory? Right? Mary Gregory should be also telling Jennings, this is what I want out of the job. This is what I'm trying to achieve. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life, or whatever, right? Clearly that conversation has not happened, right? And whose job is it to initiate that conversation? I'm going to say probably Jennings' job, right? He is the boss. He's the one who should be trying to get Mary Gregory to learn the ropes, to try to have her figure things out, okay? So after the first incident in coffee and paper, Jennings brushes it off, kind of. But at that point in time, there should be a conversation, right? Okay, we got off on the wrong foot. Let's figure out what's going on here, right? Maybe Jennings should bring Mary Gregory a coffee and kind of have that conversation, right? It's not about boss subordinate necessarily. It's just about, I'm busy, can you help me out, or whatever it is, right? So the conversation and the communication need to happen, right? We talked about communication very, very early on in the course, and communication is an important factor in terms of building relationship with your people, right? And right now, no relationship is being built, no communication's happening, right? It's just reaction. It's not proactive at all, right? And so that's potentially where all these problems are starting, because they are not on the same page by any means, right? And so why is the communication necessary, right? We got to figure out, what is Jennings' what does Jennings need? What does Mary Gregory need? And so that should lead us to McClellan's need theory. And so I asked you to kind of respond to what kind of motivations do you think are operating these individuals. And many of you have already answered different theories, which is fine. But ultimately, lots of those theories that you're also answering lead us to some of the similar kinds of things and some of the similar ideas that McClellan talks about. The content; these are all content theories of motivation, after all, right? So, if you look at Jennings, I'm not saying he's thirsting for power, but he has motivation by power, right? He expects things to be a certain way. He expects this hierarchy. He expects Mary Gregory to do what he wants because he is the boss. And so he's motivated by exerting or having this power because he believes he deserves it, right? He believes he has the position power. He believes he should be given power by Mary Gregory, and she should be subordinate to his power, right? Regardless of whatever she believes. If he wants coffee and paper, she should say, yes, sir, and give him coffee and paper, right? That's what he feels. That's what he's being driven by a little bit. But if you look at McClellan's need theory, there are other needs or other theory or other motivations that might drive you too. And so Mary Gregory clearly is driven by achievement as well, right? She wants to achieve, right? She's just out of school. She wants to get a good experience. She wants to do meaningful work. She wants to work and she wants to achieve, right? Someone exerting power over her is not helping her achieve her motivational goal of achievement, right? And also potentially affiliation, right? Maybe Mary Gregory wants to be part of something, right? Maybe she doesn't want to be someone's servant, for lack of a better word. Maybe she wants to be part of an organization. She wants to have meaningful relationships. She wants to be part of a team, right? She doesn't want to be controlled. She wants to be part of a larger whole. So ultimately, again, what are we thinking? Like, what should we do? What does it matter, right? Ultimately, there's a problem, but to solve the problem, we need to figure out what is the cause of the problem. Obviously, the cause of the problem lies in between Mary Gregory and R.J. Jennings somewhere, somehow, and that's probably where the solution lies as well. But to get a solution between Jennings and Gregory is going to require understanding what motivates these individuals. And understanding that while Jennings is motivated by his power, potentially, Mary Gregory is not motivated by those kinds of same things. Mary Gregory is not understanding Jennings' need to be the authority figure, while Jennings is not understanding Mary Gregory's need to achieve and to affiliate, right? Understanding these two things is very important. And that can be simply solved with a simple conversation. First day, let's go to lunch. Let's talk about this job. Let's talk about my role. Let's talk about your role. Jennings is like, what do you want to get out of this, Mary? Mary Gregory is like, what do you need from me as the best admin assistant I can be, right? So the communication and the relationship needs to grow. It needs to build, right? Jennings' motivation of power or Mary Gregory's motivation of achievement and affiliation, neither of them are right or wrong. They're just the reality of their situation. Their motivations drive their behavior. So understanding that motivation is going to help Jennings get the most out of Mary Gregory. Mary Gregory understanding Jennings' motivation is going to help her do the best for her boss and do the best at her job, right? So understanding these kinds of things is what is probably a step in terms of solving this problem.